Performance management and appraisal is the topic for this section. And so we will go back to sharing our screen here. And it's always difficult to know which screen I'm sharing. So I think it is that one. There we go. So after employees have been on the job for some time, we need to appraise their performance. And in appraising their performance, we want to encourage them, engage them, and help them to grow. So that's basically the goal of what we're doing in this process. So we're going to talk about what the process is of performance appraisal, what are the methods out there, the steps in an appraisal interview, and how to encourage engagement. So the performance appraisal process, these are a few things that supervisors do to ensure that things go well. So basically, the performance appraisal process, you want to set work standards, you want to assess the performance, and you want to provide feedback to the employee, and do all of this in such a way that encourages them, uplifts them, and gives them guidance for the future to keep them moving forward in a positive way. So why do we do performance appraisal? There's 5 reasons. We use it for pay, promotion, and retention decisions. We use it to link performance management to the company goals. The manager can correct any deficiencies and reinforce strengths. And then with appraisals, employees can review their career plans, and the training needs can be identified. So any help that needs to take place. So what you don't want to do is a situation where, for example, I had an employer who would hand me the evaluation and say, hey, fill this out and hand it back to me. And that was the end of it. So whatever I wrote on the evaluation was what got turned into HR. And then after several years of it, he complained to me that I gave myself too high of a score. And he was getting in trouble because all my scores were too stellar. And I turned around and said to him, well, if you have something to correct me on or to help me improve, then I would appreciate it if you sat down with me and told me what that was. But don't expect me to tell you what my faults are if we never have a conversation, because that's not a safe space for me. And then I had another employer who never believed in ever giving us a good score. So everything we got was low scores with room for improvement. And so morale was always really low. So you want a balance, right? You want to tell people what they're doing good, and you want to tell people what they need to improve. So defining the employee's goals and the performance standards. So this is a very important step in helping an employee understand what you expect from them, and then helping them have an opportunity to tell you what they expect on the job and where they want to grow. So then you can match that, and you can actually map out a career path for them. So who should be doing the appraisal? You can have peer appraisals. You can have virtual appraisals. You can have a rating committee. You can have self-appraisals. The 360-degree feedback is where everybody in the organization is giving each other feedback. You can have subordinates giving appraisals to superiors. And the more feedback you get from different levels, the more realistic that appraisal system will actually be. So the traditional performance appraisal methods could be like graphic rating scales. You have dashboards, you have rating from 1 to 5. So the graphic rating scale is the simplest and most popular method. And so this would list a number of traits, and then the employee is rated on each of those traits. The alteration ranking method, so then you would rank the employee from best trait to worst trait. You have paired comparison, so a chart of possible pairs and you're comparing those pairs. You have forced distribution method, so it's kind of like grading on the curve with a predetermined percentage of rating. You have critical incident method, so keeping a record of uncommonly good or undesirable examples of an employee's work-related behavior. The downfall of this is that you need to give these examples close to the time that they occurred. Otherwise, it feels punitive that you are remembering these way after the fact. You have narrative forms. So all or part of a written appraisal could be a narrative form. So you're describing situations. There's behavioral anchored rating scale, so bars. And this is an appraisal method that aims at combining the benefits of narrative critical incidents with a quantified rating. And then there's management by objectives, where you set objectives and then measure based on those objectives. And this is used quite a bit, by the way, in like academia and stuff. So we set our goals, and those goals then are reviewed at the end of the year, and we give evidence of how we reached those goals, and then we set new goals for the coming year. So the appraisal in practice, using forms or software or cloud-based systems to keep track of this, or computerization can expedite appraisals. So in our system, we have a deadline to go online and fill out the form and rate ourselves and put in all the evidence. And then we sign off on it, and it goes to our supervisor, and he reviews it, or she, and puts in the information and then signs off on it. And then when both of us have reviewed it, then we sit down together and talk about it together. And then at that point, the supervisor signs off on it again, that we've talked about it and we've come to an agreement on our joint review, and then it goes to HR. So electronic performance monitoring. So this is what I've just been describing. Other techniques could be conversational days. So it's nice when you have throughout the year, there are touch points. When it's simply a once-a-year conversation, too much time goes by. If there are areas that the employee needs help with, it could be too little, too late. And so getting feedback on a more regular basis is going to help an employee grow a lot more. So some errors that we need to watch for and be more careful. So there could be unclear standards, halo effect. Let me tell you, when appraisal time is coming around, everybody does good. And we're all trying to put our best behavior. It's normal. I worked one time in a very toxic environment. And when it was time for evaluations, believe me, we all did everything to make sure the employer thought we were wonderful, because she didn't believe in giving us high scores. And so we were all trying very hard to get the best scores possible during those days. It was crazy during that time. Central tendency, so we tend to not remember all the top things or the bottom things. We tend to give people a middle of the road score, or we tend to be very lenient or very strict. Excuse me. And we tend to remember the most recent. So, yeah. We want to, in order to be fair, you may want to have that journal or keep track on a more regular basis, or have those more regular check-ins. So maybe because a supervisor is inept or the method is unfair, the employee's standards should be clear. We need to really understand how things are done and keep a very regular and fair practices in place. So there are best practices, and basically you base the performance review on duties and standards of a job analysis. You try to base the performance review on observable job behaviors or objective performance data. Make it clear ahead of time what your performance expectations are, and you use standardized performance review procedures on all employees. You discuss the appraisal results. Did I read the second one? You make sure whoever conducts the reviews has frequent opportunities to observe the employees. You either use multiple raters or have the rater supervisor evaluate the appraisal results, include an appeals mechanism, document the appraisal review and the results. You discuss the appraisal results with the employee. You let the employees know ahead of time how you're going to conduct the reviews. You let the employees provide input regarding the assessment of him or her, and you indicate what the employee needs to do to improve. And then you train the supervisors to be able to be fair and do a good job. So what are the steps in the appraisal interview? So an appraisal interview is the subordinate and the supervisor sitting down together and going through this process, okay? So first of all, you have a preparation, you have planning, and you have coaching. In the planning, you have steps that you take, you measure the success, and you have a date set to complete the process. You have some guidelines for conducting the appraisal interview. So you've got the objective data. You don't get personal in that process. You offer a lot of encouragement, and you come to an agreement through that process as you move along. And then how do you handle defensive subordinates? You've got to recognize behavior, don't attack, postpone any action, and then recognize limitations of the tools that are being used. Be kind through the whole process, because it is difficult if someone is, especially if they're being reprimanded. And if you're having to criticize or reprimand or correct, then you want to maintain help them maintain their dignity. You want to discuss corrections in private. You want to give them constructive criticism and help build them up, provide examples, and then help them figure out how they're going to improve. Don't just dump on them what they did wrong. Be objective and don't interject personal bias, and then agree on a plan of action for them to improve. So if you have to give them a formal warning, you give it to them in writing, and that formal written warning gives the employee an opportunity to take them out of a bad habit. It gives them that wake-up call, and it helps to defend your rating to your own boss if it comes to that. The key points in how to use an appraisal interview to boost employee engagement, it really comes to being uplifting. You don't want to have an appraisal system that demoralizes everybody and puts everybody down and helps and basically discourages them. So use it to build engagement, give them a big picture, uplift them, encourage them, give them that opportunity to be excited and grow in the process. So always end on a positive note and a note of encouragement and a note of how they can grow in the entire process. So in the end, you want an appraisal process to be something that is very positive and that builds engagement and that builds excitement for them, rather than discouragement and putting them in a position where they would actually want to quit or disengage.